All right, so this is a review of last night's class. Unfortunately, the recording couldn't be made, and so this is just an overview, a review of everything we covered. And so we picked up from our previous class where we were talking about compound sentences, and we had done 4 of the 7 coordinating conjunctions that are used to form compound sentences. As you can see, compound sentences are ones where two simple sentences are joined together using a coordinating conjunction to form a longer sentence, right? And these are the 7 coordinating conjunctions: for and nor, but, or, yet, so. And the first letters are put together to form an acronym that is easy to remember: fanboys. Also, write simple sentences. So those are two independent clauses, and we'll come back to the topic of clauses when we get to complex sentences. Okay, so as I said, the last time we had done 4 of these: for, and, nor, but. Okay, and so today we're going to do or. The meanings, right? So when coordinating conjunctions are added to the sentence and they form compound sentences, it's not that they're just words you put in to join two simple sentences together. They have their own meaning. They add meaning to the sentence, right? It's not just like glue, right? It has meaning. And so you've got the meanings of, right, for, and, nor, and, but. And today we're going to start with or. And as we're all familiar, right, or indicates options or choice. So the sentence we wrote, right, there were a number of good sentences that were given by participants, right, all of you. The one I wrote as an example, right, we could go to the cinema or we could watch something at home. Right, so that is always giving an option, or you're going to watch something, but whether you're going to do it, you're going to go out to the cinema, whether you're going to watch something at home. Right, and so there's a choice or an option over there that is indicated by or. Then we have yet. Yet is similar to but in that it shows contrast between the first and second parts, or, right, in other words, the two simple sentences that are being joined. And so again, there were a number of good sentences shared by the class. The one given as example by myself: she always tries to stay out of trouble, yet trouble always finds her. So you can see the contrast: someone who's always trying to avoid trouble but ends up in trouble nonetheless, right? And so that is the contrast given by the word yet. And finally, we have so, and this is the opposite of the first one that we did, that was for. In for, when you're using for in a compound sentence, the second part, or the second simple sentence, the second independent clause in the compound sentence gives the reason for whatever is happening in the first one. So let's just look at that. He went to bed early for he had a long day, right? So having a long day is the reason for going to bed early. So is the opposite of that. And in this one, the first independent clause or the first simple sentence, or the first part, gives reason for the second, right? And so we have, they were in a good mood, so they went out for dinner. And right, if I just add, so the good mood becomes reason for going out to dinner, right? All right. So I hope that's clear. And that completes our topic of compound sentences. Now, as I mentioned in class previously and last night, and I'll do that again, right? Because this is a recording, that even if students just focus on using, right, these coordinating conjunctions and forming compound sentences, it's not that you absolutely have to and to use all of them. Obviously, it depends on what you're writing and what you want to say and how you want to say it. But right? When it is that you're writing and you want to express something, so instead of putting in two simple sentences or shorter sentences, you're always using and, right? Or maybe just but. Uh, you can try these others and change it up a bit. And right, the fact that you'll be using these will tell the examiner that, okay, fine, so you're familiar with the grammar, you can make compound sentences, you can vary your sentence structure, and you can, use English, you have an understanding of English to the level that you can convey the meaning that you want to using, right, conjunctions or different words or vocabulary or sentence structure or punctuation or whatever it is, right? And in this case, compound sentences. So just using compound sentences in your writing will really improve the quality of it and help you get a better mark. Then we come to, of course, complex sentences. And if you are able to get a grip of complex sentences, then that will really put you up. It will qualify you for a good high grade, right? I mean, of course, there are a lot of other factors in the marking criteria. I'm not saying that complex sentences is the only one, but yeah, it will help you achieve a high grade given everything else is also in order. Okay, so what are complex sentences? Complex sentences are one where there is one independent and one dependent clause. Okay, and so what are those? Just to go back to where we discussed sentence structure, and so a clause is part of a sentence with a subject and a verb, right? So if you have a subject and a verb in any part of a sentence, that is called a clause. You need to have both, right? It's not either or, both. Now, if that part of a sentence, right, having the subject and the word is giving you complete meaning, then that in itself is a complete sentence, right? And so a simple sentence is one complete independent clause, right? And as you may have noticed me writing over here, right? Uh, in a compound sentence where you've got two simple sentences being joined, there are two independent clauses because each one of these, if you just take a look, right? The right, Ali didn't come to school, right? So if you just take a look at that, this is one complete sentence. It's giving you complete meaning. He did complete his homework. This is also a complete sentence. Okay, and so that these are two independent clauses being joined together. If that part of a sentence does have a subject and a verb, but it is not giving complete meaning, then it is a dependent clause, right? And that's what we have in complex sentences, right? You have one independent and one dependent clause, okay? And what's joining these two and what's forming the dependent clause are what are called subordinate conjunctions, which we'll come to. Right, but just as an explanation, first let's look at the sentence. You can see it's all already annotated and explained because it's from last night's class, but I'll just go over this. We have the sentence. Let's just take a look at the sentence in full without any of the annotations. Right, so we'll go to see my sister when she comes home from the holidays. So that is the whole sentence. Okay. Now, how does this work? Well, the first part, we'll go to see my sister. That is giving you complete meaning. Okay. And so that is the independent clause. It has the subject, it has the verb, and right, it's giving you complete meaning. Then the second part, when she comes home from the holidays. So that part isn't complete. Right? I mean, it's not giving you complete meaning. Right? When she comes home from the holiday. If I just say that much, if I just say we'll go to see my sister and you're like, okay, fine. Right? We'll go to see her. And so that conveys complete meaning. But if I say when she comes home from the holidays and you're like standing there looking at me like, yeah, okay, so when she comes home from the holidays, what? Like we'll do something, we'll call her, like well, what's going to happen? And so the fact that there's no complete meaning, that is the dependent clause. Now the independent clause is also called the main clause. The dependent clause is also called the subordinate clause. Okay. Now, what makes the dependent clause dependent? Well, here's the thing. You see the word when. This is one of the subordinating conjunctions, right? There are many subordinating conjunctions, and I'll give you a list after this. And keep in mind that it is not an exhaustive list, right? It's not all the subordinating conjunctions that can be. There are many of them, right? So these, the ones that I'll be listing are some of the more commonly used ones, okay? And one of them is when. Now, what happens is, if you don't consider when, she comes home from the holiday, right? So this can kind of make sense, although it's not the best example. But right, and when we talk a bit more about the different subordinate conjunctions and make a few sentences, right, we come across examples where I'll highlight that if you remove the subordinating conjunction, then you can end up with two independent clauses. But the thing is, what happens is that using the subordinating conjunction, it becomes part of the clause, right? It becomes part of it. It's added to it. It's not treated separately, right? What was happening in these coordinating conjunctions, right? For example, we did or, so we could go to the cinema. That is an independent clause. That's a simple sentence and everything. We could watch something at home. That is another independent clause, right? And so what's happening, even though or is being used and it's adding meaning to the sentence, it's not becoming part of the clause. It's being treated separately as a conjunction. However, with subordinate clauses, right, they become part of it. They become part of the sentence. And so you read it together. And when you do that, that's what makes it incomplete, so to say, right? And therefore dependent. And right, so I've written that down over here, that the difference between coordinating and subordinating conjunctions, right? They both add their specific meaning. So just like coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions add meaning, right? It's not just a word that you're putting in; they have particular meaning, and and they have like instances where you can see you can't use any conjunction anywhere, obviously, right? And you can't even use maybe similar conjunctions. You can't just replace them because there are nuances, there are some specificities and technicalities in certain cases, right? So they both add meaning. They both have cases where they can be used or may not be used, right? But the thing about coordinating conjunctions is it does not become part of the clause, whereas the subordinating conjunction does become part of the clause, right? And the dependent clause is called so because to complete meaning, right, it needs the independent clause to make sense. So whether I say my sister, we will go to see my sister when she comes home from the holidays, or when she comes home from the holidays, we'll go to see my sister. In either case, when there's an independent clause coming along with the dependent one, and that is what helps convey complete meaning. That's what helps the dependent clause, make sense and give like the total idea that the sentence is trying to uh, pass on. Okay, all right. Now, right, as for the subordinate conjunctions, so we were listing them and we kind of ran out of time, and so I stopped. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to complete this list, and right, you've so these are organized, these are separated according to the kind of meaning they give, right? And again, this is not an exhaustive list. So you've got the first category, so to speak, is the conjunction are the conjunctions that are used for comparison. And you have than, rather than, whether, whereas, and keep in mind whereas is one word, and as much as. Right? So these are the subordinating conjunctions that are used to give the meaning of comparison. Then you've got the ones that refer to time. You've got after, before, as soon as, until, whenever, and so that's, excuse my handwriting. So I'll just rewrite that. And now that. Then you've got concession, right? And what concession means is something happening although or despite there was some sort of obstacle or hindrance, or right, so something that was getting in the way, and then still something happened, right? And to express that thought, to express that meaning, you've got though, although, and even though. Then to give the meaning of reason, you've got because, since, so that, and as. To talk about a place, you have where and wherever. And again, right, so whenever, whereas, wherever, keep the spelling in mind. These are all one word. Okay, I think what I'm going to do now is I'll complete the list. Okay, we'll go over this in our next class as well, but since I'm getting like a second chance, I'll go ahead and do that. And so, right, what we have after place, if you just give me a moment to check, right, we have condition. Oops, sorry, that needs to happen. Okay, there we go. Condition, right? And so condition meaning the if, right? If something happens and so and so and so, that's sort of like one thing is dependent on the other, sort of, right? And so that is condition. Condition doesn't mean like something's healthy or something's weak. That's not the kind of condition we're talking about, right? Condition meaning dependency, or being related or interrelated or interdependent or linked, right? So that's what the condition means over here. And for that, you've got if, only if, unless, once, provided that, and assuming that. And finally, we have manner. And this one doesn't mean like, knowing your manners and etiquettes and all of those, right? This manner means, uh, right, how something happens, the way something happens. Okay, and for to express that, we have how, as if, and as though. Right, there might be some more. I've got a PDF. I mentioned that again in last night's class, with a list of these and example sentences for all of them, and I'll share that. So keep in mind, right, we practice some of these in the next class, hopefully. Keep in mind this. Oh, there we go again. Here's the pen. Okay. So this is not an exhaustive list. Right? So this is not an exhaustive list. There are more subordinate conjunctions out there in the English language, and you kind of get a grasp of how to use them when you experience the language, right? So especially when you read it, and you read it with attention, right? So even if you're reading something casually, just be a bit attentive to what you're doing and what you're reading, and see how it's written, see the structure, see the grammar, uh, right? The vocabulary, the punctuation. If you notice that, you try to mimic it, you try to bring it into use. Keep in mind that, like most other things, language is, your functional language is only as good as what you use. So if you want to improve your language, you need to bring whatever you're learning, whatever you're coming across, or whatever interests you into practice. When you bring it into practice, that's when it will become part of your usable language, your functional language, right? Otherwise, it will just be something that you maybe read once and maybe it rings a bell, right? In theory, but not something that you're able to use when you want. So I hope all of that's clear. One thing I missed in right when talking about coordinating conjunctions and compound sentences, I'll just go back and excuse me for that. Is that you notice for most except for and the reason for that is right, it's like a shorter sentence, but kind of a rule, like a general rule, a go-to rule for coordinating conjunctions is if you notice over here, before I've got a comma before for, nor, but, or, and the same for yet and so. And so, right, a go-to rule for coordinating conjunctions is adding a comma before the conjunction, right? Before. So you can see there's a comma before nor, there's a comma before but, or, and then you got yet and so on the next page. And this is something you want to do. So if you want grammatical correctness and accuracy, it's a very minor detail, right? But it's a minor detail that makes a difference, right? It's not like, okay, fine. So if I miss it, it's like a small thing, it's just a comma. No, sometimes these small things have big impacts, right? And so the grammatical correctness and the meaning that will convey and the properness of your text, right? And so it depends on these minor things. You'll be surprised, right? How much these small things, the impact they can have. And so something just to keep in mind when you're writing. All right, so that's, I think it brings us to the end of our review and recap of last night's class, and I'll see you in next class, inshallah. Thank you, and bye bye.